Hello and welcome to the fifth lesson of this course where I'll be talking about NumPy. This is a really foundational topic in that everything else we're going to do this quarter will build on what you learn in this lesson. So I'm tremendously excited to teach this lesson and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, this first segment will be short and sweet and we'll be talking about functions and arguments. So we're going to spend much of this lesson learning new functions, but what is a function? Well, we've been using them all along. So the len function, for example, calculates the length of a list. But let's break this down. So every function has a name, in this case len, which for our purposes must always be followed with a set of parentheses. And inside the parentheses is what we call an argument or a parameter. That's an object or a variable that you pass to the function. The function takes that object or variable and it does something with it. In this case, calculates the length of a list. And we say it returns or evaluates to the integer 4 because that's the length of the list. We've also seen functions that act on a variable in a different way. They look like this. So here the function upper is acting on the string Python in lowercase. So we have the target of the function being joined to the function with a period, python.upper. But we still need these parentheses after the function even when there's no argument. So in this case, the function returns or gives back a value, that value being Python, all uppercase. And just as a reminder, when a function returns a value, you can always choose to save that value as a variable. So here we call that variable new string, the value of which is now Python in all uppercase. But sometimes functions don't return anything at all. So for example, we learned about the sort function, which acts on lists and strings. So imagine you have a list called numbers, and then you call the sort function on numbers using the syntax we just saw earlier. So in this case, the function doesn't actually return anything. It simply modifies numbers in place. And that means that when you run this code, it will seem like nothing happened. The next time that you check the value of numbers, maybe with like a print statement, you realize that, oh, it's now sorted 5, 6, 7, 8. But surprise, it turns out that the sort function can actually take an argument. But it doesn't have to, it's optional. So you can use sort with empty parentheses, as we saw before, and it will sort a list from low to high. But if you want to sort a list from high to low, you have the option of specifying what's known as a named or keyword argument. And that argument has the specific name reverse, and reverse accepts a value, which we set using an equal sign. Now in this case, the value has to be a Boolean, true or false, and true means yes, we want to reverse the sorting order. So what you get here is sorted from high to low, 8, 7, 6, 5. Okay, so I said that named arguments are optional, but that doesn't mean that they just disappear when you choose not to specify them. They're actually still there, but they're invisible. They take on what we call a default value. So here, false is the default value of the keyword argument reverse. So writing numbers.sort, over here, numbers.sort is the same thing, is equivalent to writing numbers.sort reverse equals false. So in this example, they would both return 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, hopefully that makes sense because things are about to get a little more complicated. And here's the thing. Functions can have many more arguments than just one, and those can be a mix of named arguments and what we call positional arguments, which must always come before any named arguments. So now positional arguments, they don't have a keyword to identify them. Instead, Python infers what you're trying to pass to the function by looking at the order or the position in which you provide the arguments, hence why they're called positional. So here we have 3 positional arguments, arg1, arg2, and arg3, and 2 named arguments, named arg1 and named arg2. And those have default values, default 1, default 2, and you can use their names to specify them in any order when you call this function, as long as these named arguments follow the 3 positional arguments, which don't have a keyword. Okay, that's it for the segment. You won't actually see another named argument until Katie's next lesson for Thursday. But in the rest of this lesson, you will see some examples of positional arguments and the different syntax options for functions that I introduced.